and subscribe. Otherwise, I might pay you guys a visit.
Now on your screen right there, you're going to see a picture of Daniel Dubois and Alexander Povetkin. Of course, Alexander Povetkin, he's got a fight coming up on September the 22nd at Wembley Stadium against one unified heavyweight champion in Anthony Joshua. And Daniel Dubois, he's got a fight coming up as well against Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson is a bit of a journeyman, and this will be Daniel Dubois' 9th fight. But Kevin Johnson is the same guy who knocked out Francisco Pianeta, who was, of course, Tyson Fury's last opponent. And that fight didn't happen not so long ago with Kevin Johnson and Pianeta. Now, a lot of people, if they're running around saying that Daniel Dubois did this to Alexander Povetkin's face, first of all, if he did, excellent stuff. So the future is bright for heavyweight boxing, right? But quite clearly, if you're running around saying that, then you don't quite know how a training camp works. So if anybody's making videos on this, running with the narrative that a 8-0 novice is beating up Anthony Joshua's next opponent in sparring, no. Quite clearly, either they don't know too much about what goes on in training camp, or they're just running with some narrative, hate narrative. So I'll tell you exactly how a training camp works, or at least for the most part anyway. So Daniel Dubois is over there in Russia helping out Povetkin, okay? But it's not just Daniel Dubois there. In fact, he has a bunch of some huge behemoths. I'm not too sure like who they are. I'm presuming they're from Russia as well, or Poland, or around that kind of area of Europe, I'm presuming. But these guys are massive. These guys are hench, right? And not only that, they've got Izzy Ogonu as well, who a lot of you guys will know from his fight with Dominic Brazil and others. Ogonu is a beast. So, quite how a sparring goes, well, quite clearly Povetkin isn't really using head guards. Quite clearly. And if he's taking that kind of punishment, then you know what? He's tough. And Anthony Joshua needs to be on his A game. Because if Povetkin can take that kind of punishment, then, as I said, he is ultra tough. From these big men as well, including Daniel Dubois. Now, if anybody's saying that Daniel Dubois did this, first of all, how do you know? Second of all, no, he didn't. And I'll tell you why he didn't. Because Daniel Dubois isn't one for boxing and just beating up opponents. That's not what he does. He knocks opponents out. So if Daniel Dubois did all that damage to Alexander Povetkin's face, then Povetkin has got a head of iron. Because Daniel Dubois, he knocks people out. When he hits you with that big right hand, he knocks you out. So quite clearly, that is not what's happened. Now, in a training camp, usually what happens, so in this particular one, for example, with Povetkin over there in Russia, he's got Daniel Dubois, he's got Izzy Ogonu, plus these other hench guys who look like they should be in Lord of the Rings, okay? But, so, for that kind of level, they will do a 12-round sparring, or, in most cases, a 15-round sparring. Now, it won't be 12 rounds against Daniel Dubois. That's not how it works, okay? So, a couple of ways it could work is, for example, Alexander Povetkin, of course, he will do the entire 12 or 15 rounds, depending on what kind of camp he's doing. Then he will have, in round 1, Daniel Dubois. Round 2, Izzy Ogonu. Round 3, one of these orc-looking guys. Okay, and round 4, and so. Then Dubois will come in again when it's his turn. Then Izzy Ogonu. So these guys are always fresh, while Povetkin is knackered. That's pretty much how it works. Sometimes it's not quite that way. The first 2 or 3 rounds might be Dubois, then the next 2 or 3 rounds could be Izzy Ogonu, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much how it happens. So if anybody to say that it's Daniel Dubois, no, it's not. I'm not saying he didn't contribute to this. He may well have. Or he may not have done any kind of sparring with Povetkin at that point, as he's only just been there. And in addition to that, Daniel Dubois will also be sparring Izzy Ogonu and some of these big WWE wrestler looking guys. Okay? That's pretty much how it will be, because obviously he's got a fight with Kevin Johnson coming up. So he needs to be getting some ring time himself. And so that's pretty much how a training camp works. So if anybody who's saying that Daniel Dubois did this, no, he didn't. Okay, he didn't. Now, Daniel Dubois, he would take some kind of credit for this, because he did take credit for dropping Joshua in sparring and others, which apparently turned out not to be true, because Joshua said to Daniel Dubois and said to Joe Joyce and others, put out there that you knock me out or drop me in sparring, this will help your profile. Anthony Joshua said this at the Joseph Parker press conference. The only person who has actually beat up Anthony Joshua in training camp is, in fact, David Price. He's the only person who's actually either dropped him or knocked him out. I'm not too sure which one it was. But even so, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter. I mean, you look at many different ones. Okay, right, so for me, I would imagine it'll probably be the Wilder fanatics. Not the Wilder fans, but the fanatics who are running with the story that this 21-year-old, who's going to be 22 this month, 8-0, actually did this to Anthony Joshua's next opponent in Alexander Povetkin. So therefore, that shows how weak of an opposition that Povetkin is, if Daniel Dubois could do this. But as I said, that's just not true. But okay, let's look at this one. Joe Joyce had 0 professional fights, and he beat up Bermane Stiverne in sparring, in training camp, right before Stiverne took on Deontay Wilder for the rematch, of course. So that is a fact where Bermane Stiverne actually kicked Joe Joyce out of the training camp. It happens, you know. Errol Spence Jr. allegedly handed Floyd Mayweather his ass. Allegedly. Training camps, these kind of things happen. Deontay Wilder got knocked clean out on 2 occasions by Vladimir Klitschko, and there were plenty of people there to see it, including Dillian Whyte. So, things happen. It doesn't really matter what happens in training camp, it's what happens on the night. But as I said, quite clearly, for Povetkin to take this kind of damage, to do to his face what's happened is, number 1, he hasn't been wearing headguard, and number 2, he is tough. And if anybody thinks that Joshua's going to walk through him, I hope you're right. But I think that Joshua could be in for a long, hard night. He really could be. But you know what? Let's wait and see. But, you know, also, just remember now, Daniel Dubois is powerful. Very, very powerful. Okay? And you know what? Joshua isn't Dubois. He really isn't. Would Daniel Dubois beat Anthony Joshua right now if you put him in the ring? Of course not. Of course not. I mean, if he lands on Joshua, maybe. But what are the chances of him landing on him? Very slim. But anyway, sparring is sparring. You're supposed to get beaten up in sparring. You're supposed to beat up your opponents. But as I said, every opponent that you're having when it's your training camp is always going to be fresh. They're never going to be going the full 12 rounds with you, because they're going to start getting fatigued and beaten up and potentially stopped. That's not what's going to happen. The idea of, say, Povetkin is to try and survive all 12 rounds against these guys who are fresh. So 1 round, maybe 2 rounds, a fresh guy comes in. That's how it works. So if anybody is running around saying that Daniel Dubois did this to Povetkin, then first of all, Povetkin is tough to take those big shots from Daniel Dubois where he's only getting marked up. And second of all, you don't know too much about what goes on. So anyway, that's pretty much my thoughts on it all. If there's something that I may have missed out, obviously please let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what's wrong with you? It's great over here. Subscribe. Come on now. Anyway, good luck to Dan Dubois over there in Russia. I have heard some people saying it's not good of Dan Dubois to go over there and help a Russian against a fellow Brit. Listen, it's all about experience. I have no issue with Daniel Dubois going to Russia. None whatsoever. I like Daniel Dubois. I'm a fan of Daniel Dubois. And I hope he's going to be one of the kids that's coming through that is going to ultimately reach the pinnacle. For me, he left the amateur setup way too early. I think Frank Warren showed him a bit too much green money, a little bit too early, and turned his head. So, of course, he's missed out on a whole lot of experience as amateur. These are your learning years, and Frank Warren took him out of there, much like he did with Anthony Yard and others. So all the fights that he has now are all learning fights. Kevin Kingpin Johnson, he's been around the block. As I said, it was only about a year or so ago that Kevin Johnson knocked out Pianetta, which is Tyson Fury's next opponent. So I think Wilder fans, if you're running with this whole Daniel Dubois narrative against Alexander Povetkin, you really need to be looking at a little bit closer to home as to what's been happening with Deontay Wilder's opponent, Bermane Stiverne, where Joe Joyce beat him up. He called him a potato sack with dreadlocks, that to the point he got thrown out. But listen, It doesn't really matter what happens in sparring. What happens in sparring stays in sparring. Drop your thoughts below. Click that thumbs up, subscribe. Catch you all on the next video.